Dr. Minho pressed his face against the cold metal window of the research ship Peaceful Dawn. Below them, the ancient world of Kethver Prime spun slowly in the darkness of space. Strange purple lights danced across its surface like frozen lightning. He had been studying these lights for 3 months now, and they still amazed him. "The readings are incredible," said his wife, Dr. Sumi, from her chair at the communications desk. Her fingers moved quickly over the glowing buttons. "The energy patterns don't match anything we know about," Minho smiled at her excitement. After 10 years of marriage, he still loved watching her work. Sumi was the best communications expert in the Galactic Cooperative. She could make any machine talk to any other machine, no matter how different they were. "Maybe the ancient builders were trying to tell us something," said Commander Jiwan from the doorway. She wore the blue uniform of the diplomatic corps, but her hand rested on her weapon. Old habits from her military days, the three friends had volunteered for this mission together. The Galactic Cooperative wanted to study Kethver Prime because it was one of the oldest worlds ever found. Whoever built the cities down there had disappeared millions of years ago. They left behind only empty buildings and these strange energy patterns. Minho walked to the main table where they kept their research. Holographic images floated above it, showing the ruins they had explored. The buildings were made of some kind of crystal that never seemed to wear out. The hallways were filled with symbols that no one could read. "Look at this," he said, pointing to one symbol that looked like a tree with too many branches. "I found this same mark in 12 different buildings, always in the same place, always facing the same direction." Jiwan studied the image. "Maybe it's a warning." "Or a greeting," Sumi said. She was always more hopeful than the others. The ship's alarm started beeping. All 3 of them froze. They had been in space long enough to know that alarms meant trouble. "What is that?" Minho asked. Sumi was already at her station, her hands flying over the controls. "Something big just came out of hyperspace, really big." The main screen flickered to life. What they saw made their blood turn cold. Ships, hundreds of them. They were black and ugly, covered in spikes and weapons. Each one was the size of a city, and they were moving toward the Peaceful Dawn like hungry wolves. "Vactal," Jiwan whispered. She had gone pale. "It's the Vactal Empire." Minho had heard stories about the Vactal, but he had hoped they were just tales to scare children. They were supposed to be monsters who traveled from world to world, taking prisoners and turning planets into slave farms. No one had ever seen them this far into cooperative space. "They can't be here," Sumi said, but her voice was shaking. "This is a protected research zone." The largest Vactal ship filled their screen. It looked like a giant metal scorpion with too many arms. Lights blinked along its sides like angry red eyes. "They're scanning us," Sumi reported. "And they're sending a message." The message came through in broken galactic standard, the language most species used to talk to each other. The voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Small ship, you will stop. You will prepare for boarding. You will not resist." Commander Jiwan grabbed her weapon. "Like hell we will." "Jiwan, there are hundreds of them and one of us," Minho sighed. "We need to call for help." Sumi was already working at her communications station. "I'm sending out a distress signal on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." "The nearest cooperative patrol is 6 days away," Jiwan said. "We'll be dead in 6 minutes." The Vactal ships were getting closer. Minho could see smaller ships launching from the big ones, boarding craft. They looked like flying daggers, sharp and fast. "Signal sent," Sumi announced. "I included our location." "And everything we know about the Vactal force. Think anyone will come?" Minho asked. Before Sumi could answer, the ship shook. The Vactal had fired some kind of weapon at them. Not enough to destroy the Peaceful Dawn, but enough to damage their engines. "We're trapped," Jiwan said. She checked her weapon one more time. "I count about 20 boarding craft heading our way." Minho looked at his wife and his friend. They had come here to study ancient mysteries. Instead, they were about to become prisoners of the most feared species in the galaxy. "What do the Vactal want with us?" he asked, Jawan's face was grim. From what I heard in the military, they use other species for experiments. They want to understand how different biology works. They're not gentle about it. Sumi grabbed Minho's hand. The signal went out. Someone will know what happened to us. The first boarding craft hit their ship with a loud crash. Then another. And another. The sounds of cutting tools echoed through the halls. The Vactal were coming inside. They're cutting through the hull, Juwan said. She moved to the door and raised her weapon. When they come through that door, stay behind me. Minho pulled Sumi close. He could smell her fear, but also her determination. Even now, she was still trying to send out more messages. No good, she said. They're jamming our communications now. The cutting sounds got louder. Sparks began to fly from the door as the Vactile tools burned through the metal. Minho, Sumi said quietly. I got one message out before they jammed us. I told them we were researchers. I told them we were being attacked. I told them. She stopped. What? I told them we didn't want to die like this. The door exploded inward. 3 creatures stepped through the smoke. They looked like insects that had learned to walk on 2 legs. Their skin was black and shiny like beetle shells. Their faces had too many eyes and too many teeth. Jiwan fired her weapon. The energy beam hit the first Vactal in the chest, but it just made him angry. These creatures wore armor that could stop most weapons. More Vactal poured through the door. Jiwan kept firing until they knocked the weapon from her hands. One of them grabbed her arms and held her while another put some kind of collar around her neck. Compliance collar, the creature said in that scraping voice. You will not resist now. They put collars on Minho and Sumi too. The collars sent little shocks through their bodies when they tried to move too fast or fight back. Research specimens, said the largest Vactal. Good condition. These will serve well in the laboratories. They dragged the 3 friends through the corridors of their own ship. Minho saw that the Vactal had also brought some kind of scanning equipment aboard. They were studying everything, copying all the research data. They're stealing our work, Sumi said. They're stealing more than that, Jiwan replied. The Vactal ship was even worse inside than it looked from outside. The walls were covered with sharp metal spikes. The air smelled like blood and chemicals. Strange sounds echoed from distant chambers. Minho tried not to think about what made those sounds. They were pushed into a holding cell with thick metal bars. Other prisoners were already there. Beings from a dozen different species, all wearing the same compliance collars, all with the same look of hopeless fear in their eyes. How long have you been here? Minho asked in a creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bird. 37 days, it replied. They take some of us every day. They bring back the ones who survive the experiments, but they single quotes different. Sumi squeezed Minho's hand tighter. Someone got our message. Someone knows where we are. The galaxy is big, said another prisoner, this one with purple skin and 6 arms. Help doesn't always come. But Minho remembered the hope in Sumi's voice when she sent that final message. She had aimed it at every corner of the galaxy. Someone out there had heard their call for help. Someone knew that innocent people were in trouble. He just hoped that someone cared enough to answer, outside their cell. The Vactal moved through their ship like busy ants. They were preparing something, more experiments maybe. Or perhaps they were getting ready to leave this place and take their prisoners somewhere even worse. Minho closed his eyes and tried to stay strong. Somewhere in the darkness of space, their message was still traveling, racing from star to star, looking for someone who would listen, someone who would care enough to help strangers they had never met, someone who would answer their desperate call. Admiral Yunwu sat in his office on Earth, staring at the holographic display that showed the damage from their last war. Red dots marked where human ships had been destroyed. Yellow dots showed damaged colonies that were still being rebuilt. The war with the consortium of synthetic mines had ended only 3 months ago, and humanity was tired. His assistant, Lieutenant Borum, knocked on the door. Sir, we have an emergency transmission. It came through the deep space network. Another complaint from the colonies about supply shortages? Yunwu asked without looking up. No, sir. It's a distress call from outside human space. That got Hyunwoo's attention. He looked at the young officer. Play it. The message was short and full of static, but the fear in the woman's voice was clear. This is Dr. Sumi of the research vessel Peaceful Dawn. We are under attack by the Vaktal Empire. They are taking prisoners for ... experiments. If anyone receives this, please help us. We don't want to die like this, the message ended. The office was quiet for a long moment. Where did this come from? Yunwu asked. Kethver. Prime, sir. It's about 6 days from here at maximum hyperspace speed. The message bounced through 12 relay stations before reaching us. Double quotes. Hyunwoo studied the star charts on his wall. Kethver Prime was far outside human territory. It was in neutral space, controlled by the Galactic Cooperative. Humans had no business there, no legal obligation to help. Have you sent this to Fleet Command? Yes, sir. And to the Emergency Defense Council. Within an hour, every important military leader on Earth was sitting around the big table in the war room, the same table where they had planned the final battle against the synthetic mines, the same room where they had celebrated victory just 3 months ago. Fleet Admiral Nari stood at the head of the table. She was a small woman with gray hair and cold eyes. Everyone called her the Iron Lady of the Outer Colonies. She had never lost a battle, and she had never left anyone behind. You've all heard the message, she said. These people are in trouble. Counselor Taeyun, a thin man in expensive clothes, shook his head. Admiral, with respect, this is not our problem. These are not human citizens. We have no treaty obligations here. They asked for help, Nari said simply. So do a lot of people. We can't save everyone. General Yojin, who commanded the Marine Corps, leaned forward. What do we know about this Vaktal Empire? Intelligence Officer Commander Sung-hoon opened a file on his tablet. Not much, sir. They're from the far edge of the galaxy. Reports say they're slavers and ... worse. They capture people from other species for medical experiments. No one has ever successfully fought them off. How big is their military? Asked Admiral Chang-ho, who commanded the home fleet. Unknown, sir. They've never had to use their full strength. Most species surrender when they show up. Captain Dongmin of the battleship Seoul's Fury spoke up. Sir, how many people are we talking? About saving? The research ship had a crew of about 20, Sung-hoon replied. But intelligence suggests the Vaktal may have taken prisoners from other attacks too. Counselor Taeyun stood up. 20 people. You're talking about risking thousands of human lives for 20 aliens we've never met? The room fell silent. Everyone knew he was right from a purely logical standpoint. Humanity had just finished a war. Their fleets were scattered. Their people were tired. This made no sense. Captain Dongmin cleared his throat. Sir, with respect, since when do humans calculate odds before doing what's right? Nari smiled for the first time that day. Captain Dongmin speaks the truth. These people called for help. We answer, Admiral, Taeyun said, his voice rising. We can't afford another war. The reconstruction alone will take years. Our colonies need protection. Our trade routes need patrol ships. We simply don't have the resources. General Yojin stood up. She was a big woman with scars on her face from the synthetic war. Counselor, my Marines didn't sign up to protect trade routes. They signed up to protect people who can't protect themselves. Even aliens? Taeyun asked. Especially aliens, Yojin replied, because that's what makes us human. Admiral Yunwu had been quiet through all of this. Now he spoke. What kind of force would we need? Commander Sung-hoon checked his files. Intelligence suggests the Vaktal travel in large fleets. Hundreds of ships. We'd need everything we have just to match their numbers. Then we send everything we have, Nari said. The debate continued for 2 more hours, but everyone in the room knew the decision had already been made. Humans didn't abandon people who asked for help. It was that simple. Admiral Nari activated the Emergency Mobilization Protocol. It was a system designed to recall every human warship from wherever they were serving. The last time it had been used was during the Synthetic War. When Earth itself was under attack, the response was immediate and overwhelming. Admiral Seokjin commanded the Colonial Defense Fleet. His ships were spread across 12 star systems, protecting human colonies and trade routes. When he got the recall order, he didn't hesitate. Every ship under his command turned around and headed for Earth. Commander Minna ran the asteroid mining operations in the outer system. Her ships weren't warships, but they were big and tough. When she heard about the mission, she volunteered to convert them. "These industrial lasers can cut through asteroid rock," she said. "They'll cut through enemy armor, too." Captain King Ho led the fast attack wing, small ships designed to hit enemies quickly and disappear. His pilots were young and eager, mostly veterans of border skirmishes with pirates. When they heard they were going to rescue prisoners, they started checking their weapons twice a day, but the most surprising response came from the Terran. Marine Corps' General Yamin had been retired for 2 years. He was the legendary Ghost of Europa, the man who had held an entire enemy army at bay with just 2 companies of Marines. When he heard about the mission, he came out of retirement. "I may be old," he said, "but I'm not dead yet." Colonel Sun Hee had led special operations during the Synthetic War. Her teams could appear anywhere, anytime, like ghosts in the night. When she volunteered her entire unit for the mission, no one was surprised. Her soldiers were the kind of people who ran toward danger, not away from it. Master Chief Haniel was the toughest Marine anyone had ever met. He had served in every major human conflict for the past 30 years. His men would follow him into hell if he asked. When he heard they were going to rescue prisoners from alien torturers, he smiled for the first time in months. The fleet that assembled at Earth was the largest in human history. Over 2,000 ships, from massive dreadnoughts to tiny fighters, supply vessels, medical ships, mobile repair stations, even converted civilian transports pressed into service as troop carriers. Lieutenant Maiyan, the intelligence officer, assigned to analyze the enemy, worked day and night to understand the Vaktal. What she found was not encouraging. They were technologically advanced, numerically superior, and had never been defeated. "Their ships are bigger than ours," she reported to the fleet commanders. "Their weapons are more powerful, their defenses are stronger. By every measure, we're outmatched." Admiral Chang Ho laughed. "Mayan, if we only fought enemies we could easily beat, we'd never fight at all." Captain Dongmin nodded. "Besides, they've never fought humans before. They don't know what they're getting into." "Fleet," Admiral Nari addressed the entire fleet before they departed. Her message was broadcast to every ship, every Marine, every sailor in the Armada. 6 days ago, strangers called for help. They're not human. They're not our allies. We owe them nothing except what we owe every living being in this universe, the chance to live free from fear. The Vaktal Empire thinks they can take prisoners, conduct experiments, destroy lives without consequence. Today they learn they're wrong. Today they learn what happens when you hurt innocents while humans are listening. We may be outnumbered. We may be outgunned. But we have something they don't understand. We choose to fight impossible odds not for conquest. Not for glory, but because someone asked for help. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us dangerous. The fleet jumped to hyperspace with a flash of light that could be seen from Earth's surface. They were heading into the unknown, to fight an enemy they had never seen, to save people they had never met. It was the most human thing they had ever done. The hyperspace tunnel around the human fleet looked like a river of stars flowing backward. Admiral Nari stood on the bridge of her flagship, the massive dreadnought Inchin's Pride, watching the light patterns that meant they were traveling faster than light itself. In 6 days they would reach Kethver Prime. In 6 days they would face an enemy that had never been defeated. Around her, 2,000 human ships moved through hyperspace like a school of metal fish. Each ship carried weapons, supplies, and people who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Lieutenant Himen, "Admiral Seokjin wants to speak with you." The holographic display flickered to life, showing Admiral Seokjin on the bridge of his ship Bizan Rising. Behind him, Nari could see the organized chaos of a warship preparing for battle. Nari, my supply officers are asking about the mission duration, Seokjin said. How long do we expect to be in combat? As long as it takes, Nari replied. We didn't come all this way to give up if the first attack doesn't work. Admiral Sujing appeared on another display. She commanded the logistic ships, the vessels that carried food, fuel, and ammunition for the fleet. We have enough supplies for 2 weeks of heavy fighting, she reported. After that, we'll need to capture enemy supplies or find another source. Then we better win quickly, said Captain Donmin, joining the conversation from his battleship Soul's Fury. His ship was one of the largest in the fleet. Armed with railguns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds, Commander Do-yun, who led the fighter squadrons, had been running combat simulations non-stop since they left Earth. Admiral, we've been practicing attack patterns based on what little we know about Vaktal ship design. Their vessels are built for intimidation, not efficiency. Big, scary-looking, but with weak points we can exploit. What kind of weak points? Asked General Yojin. The Marine commander was studying boarding procedures, planning how her soldiers would fight inside enemy ships. Their armor is strongest at the front and sides, but weaker on top and bottom, Do-yun explained. They expect enemies to attack them head-on like most civilized species do. They're not ready for three-dimensional combat. Captain Kyung-ho's face appeared on the display. His fast attack wing flew the smallest, fastest ships in the fleet. My pilots have been studying hit-and-run tactics. We can attack from above and below while the big ships keep them busy from the front. Lieutenant Maion had spent every waking hour studying intelligence reports about the Vaktal Empire. What she had learned was disturbing. Admirals, I need to brief everyone on what we're really facing here. The Vaktal don't just capture prisoners. They're conducting biological experiments on living subjects. They're trying to understand how different species work so they can create better weapons. The displays went quiet. Everyone understood what that meant. How many prisoners are we talking about? Asked Colonel Sun-hee. Her special operations teams were already planning rescue missions. Unknown, Mayan replied. But intelligence suggests they've been raiding research stations and small colonies for months. There could be hundreds of people in their prison ships. Master Chief Haniel had been listening to the conversation from the marine preparation areas. His voice came through the speakers with the authority of 30 years of combat experience. Ma'am, my Marines are ready for boarding operations. We've been studying the ship layouts from intelligence. We know where the prison areas are likely to be. Admiral Nari looked at the tactical display showing their fleet formation. Each ship was exactly where it needed to be, moving in perfect coordination despite the vast distances involved. It was a thing of beauty, this human ability to work together toward a common goal. People, she said, we need to talk about what happens when we arrive. The Vaktal have never faced an enemy like us. They're used to fighting species that follow traditional space combat rules. They expect formal battle lines, predictable tactics, surrender when the odds are bad. They're going to be disappointed, said Captain Donmin with a grim smile. Commander, Minna joined the conversation from her converted mining vessel Iron Mountain. Her ship wasn't pretty, but it was tough as steel and armed with industrial cutting lasers. Admiral, my crews have been practicing precision targeting. These mining lasers can cut through asteroid rock like butter. Enemy armor shouldn't be much different. What's our battle plan? Asked Admiral Chang-ho, who commanded a group of destroyers designed for ship-to-ship combat. Nari brought up a holographic model of the Kethver system. Intelligence says the Vaktal fleet is concentrated around the planet. They're probably using the surface as a processing center for their prisoners. We'll drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the system and advance in 3 waves. She manipulated the display to show ship positions. First wave will be our heaviest ships. Dahlman's battleships and the converted mining vessels will engage their main fleet head-on. Draw their attention and make them think we're fighting a conventional battle. Second wave? Asked Seokjin. Your colonial defense ships will attack from the flanks. Hit their formation from the sides while they're focused on the first wave. Break up their battle line and cause confusion. And the third wave? This from Captain Kingho, though he probably already knew the answer. Your fast attack wings supported by our destroyers will punch through their formation and head straight for the planet. Your job is to find and destroy their prison facilities before they can kill the hostages out of spite. It was a complex plan that required perfect timing and coordination. One mistake could doom the entire fleet. But it was also a very human plan, relying on speed, surprise, and the willingness to take enormous risks to save innocent lives. General Yeoman had been quiet through most of the briefing. Now the old Marine spoke up. What about ground operations? If they have facilities on the planet's surface, someone's going to have to go down there and clean them out. That's your job, General, Nari replied. You and Yojin will coordinate the planetary assault. I'm giving you every Marine we have. How many is that? Asked Yemen. 50,000. The number hung in the air like a challenge. 50,000 Marines against an unknown number of enemies on an alien world. It should have been terrifying. Instead, the Marine commander seemed pleased. 50,000 Marines, mused Colonel Sunhee. That should be enough. Master Chief Haniel's laughter came through the speakers. Ma'am, that's not 50,000 Marines. That's 50,000 very angry humans with military training. The Vaktal have no idea what they're about to face. Lieutenant Mayan cleared her throat. There's something else you all need to know. The Vaktal have never been defeated because they've never fought a species that refuses to surrender. When things go bad, most civilized species negotiate. They try to minimize casualties. They look for diplomatic solutions. And humans? Asked Admiral Seokjin, though he already knew the answer. Humans get angry, Mayan replied. And angry humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The conversation continued for hours as they refined their battle plans. Every contingency was discussed, every possible problem examined. By the time they were finished, every commander knew exactly what they were supposed to do, but the most important part of the plan wasn't written down anywhere. It was the understanding that they would not give up, no matter what happened. They would not retreat, no matter how bad the odds became. They had come here to save people, and they would not leave without completing that mission. As the briefing ended and the commanders returned to their ships, Admiral Nari remained on her bridge, staring out at the hyperspace tunnel. In 5 days, they would arrive at Kethver Prime. In 5 days, the Vaktal Empire would learn what happened when they hurt innocent people while humans were listening. She thought about Dr. Sumi's message, playing over and over in her mind. We don't want to die like this. Such simple words. Such a basic human desire to live with dignity. The Vaktal had made a mistake when they captured those researchers. They had touched something that humans held sacred, the right of innocent people to live without fear. Now they would pay the price for that mistake. Admiral Nari smiled coldly and began composing her final message to Earth Command. Fleet proceeding to target. All personnel ready for combat operations. We will answer the call. In the cargo holds and crew quarters of 2,000 ships, humans prepared for war. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kethver system like a storm breaking over calm water. 2,000 ships materialized in perfect formation, their engines glowing like angry stars against the darkness. Admiral Nari stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical display as it filled with information about the enemy. Contact, called Sensor Officer Lieutenant Wujin. I'm reading 500 Vaktal ships in orbit around the planet. They're huge, Admiral. On the main screen, the Vaktal fleet came into view. Each ship looked like a nightmare made of black metal and sharp edges. The smallest ones were twice the size of human destroyers. The largest was a monster that dwarfed anything humans had ever built. That big one, said Captain Isiel, the fleet tactical officer. It's got to be their command ship. Look at the size of it. The fortress ship dominated the display. It was shaped like a giant spider with too many legs, covered in weapon pods and armor plating. Red lights blinked along its surface like the eyes of some terrible beast. Admiral Zekthal S. Flagship Terror of Stars, said Intelligence Officer Mayan, reading from her database. Intelligence says it's the size of a small moon. Crew of over 100,000. Before Admiral Nari could respond, the communications system crackled to life. The voice that came through sounded like metal scraping against stone, speaking broken galactic standard. Unknown fleet, this is Admiral Zekthal of the Vaktal Empire. You have entered our operational zone. Identify yourselves? Nari nodded to Lieutenant Hyman at the communications station. Put me through to their commander. Your live, Admiral. Nari's voice was calm and cold as winter on Earth. This is Fleet Admiral Nari of the Terran Defense Force. You have attacked civilians under our protection. You have 30 seconds to release all prisoners and withdraw from this system. The response came back immediately, filled with what sounded like laughter. Terran? You mean the mammals from the little blue world? How amusing. You have traveled far to die, creatures. We have 500 ships. You cannot possibly have more than we do. You're right, Nari replied. We only brought 2,000 ships. We didn't want to make it unfair. The communication channel went silent for a moment. Then Admiral Zekthal's voice came back, no longer amused. Impossible. No species maintains such a large fleet. You are lying. Would you like to count them yourself? Nari asked. You have 29 seconds left. While the Vaktal tried to process this information, the human fleet continued to advance. The first wave, led by Captain Dongman's Soul's Fury, moved forward with the slow, steady pace of an avalanche. Behind them came the converted mining ships, their massive hulls bristling with industrial cutting lasers. Admiral, called Wujin. From the sensor station, I'm detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface. They've got some kind of processing facility down there. And ... He paused, checking his readings again. Admiral, there are life signs, lots of them, thousands of prisoners. Nari felt a cold anger settle in her chest. Thousands of prisoners meant thousands of people being tortured and experimented on while they spoke. How long until we're in weapons range? 2 minutes at current speed, replied Captain Isiel. The Vaktal commander's voice came through the speakers again, full of rage now. You dare threaten the Vaktal Empire? We are the masters of this galaxy. We have conquered 100 worlds. Your pathetic species will make excellent laboratory specimens. Your time is up, Nari said simply. She nodded to Captain Isiel, who opened a channel to all human ships. All units, this is Fleet Command. Execute Battle Plan Alpha. Repeat, execute Battle Plan Alpha. Captain Dongman's battleship Soul's Fury fired the first shot. The massive railgun on its front sent a metal slug racing across space at nearly the speed of light. The projectile hit a Vaktal cruiser dead center, punching through its armor like it was paper. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire and debris. What was that? Admiral Zekthal's voice crackled through the speakers, no longer confident. The answer came from every human ship in the first wave. Railguns, particle beams, and missile launchers opened fire at the same time. The space between the two fleets filled with deadly light as human weapons reached out toward their targets. The Vaktal had never seen anything like it. Most civilized species fought at close range with energy weapons. Humans were attacking from distances where most weapons were useless, using solid projectiles that moved too fast to dodge. Their weapons don't make sense, one Vaktal officer was heard saying over the intercepted communications. How can they hit us from so far away? Commander Minna's mining ship Iron Mountain answered that question. Her industrial cutting laser reached out like a sword of light and sliced a Vaktal destroyer in half from bow to stern. The two pieces of the enemy ship drifted apart, trailing atmosphere and debris. Target practice, Maynard reported calmly to Fleet Command. These aliens build pretty ships, but they don't armor them properly. The Vaktal fleet tried to respond, but their energy weapons couldn't reach the humans yet. They began to advance, hoping to close the distance and bring their superior firepower to bear. That was exactly what Admiral Nari had been hoping for. Second wave, execute flanking maneuver, she ordered. Admiral Seokjin's colonial defense fleet had been waiting for this moment. His ships came in from both sides of the Vaktal formation, their weapons firing as they moved. The enemy found themselves caught between three groups of human ships. Taking fire from multiple directions at once, the Vactal formation began to break apart. Ships that had been advancing in neat lines scattered as their commanders tried to find targets they could actually hit. Some turned to face Seokjin's flanking force. Others continued toward Dongmin's battleships. A few tried to protect their command ship. It was exactly the kind of confusion Admiral Nari had planned for. "Third wave, you are clear for planetary assault," she announced. Captain Kyung-ho's fast attack wing burst through the gap in the Vactal formation like bullets through tissue paper. His small fast ships dodged between the massive enemy vessels, too quick and too small to be easy targets. Behind them came Admiral Chung-ho's destroyers, their weapons blazing as they fought their way toward the planet. Their job was to destroy the processing facilities on the surface before the Vactal could kill their prisoners. "This is impossible," Admiral Zekfel's voice screamed over the communications. "You cannot fight like this. There are rules, conventions, civilized procedures for space combat." Captain Dongmin's reply came back cold and hard. "We didn't come here to be civilized. We came here to save people you were torturing." The Soul's Fury fired again, its railgun punching through the armor of another Vactal ship. Around it, the rest of the human fleet continued their methodical destruction of the enemy formation. But the real shock came when the Vactal managed to score a hit on Admiral Seokjin's flagship Bizen Rising. The ship's engines were damaged, and it began to fall toward the planet's gravity well instead of abandoning ship. Seokjin and his crew did something that broke the Vactal completely. They aimed their crippled vessel at the largest processing facility on the planet's surface and locked the navigation system. "This is Admiral Seokjin to all ships," his voice came over the communications. "My ship is gone, but we're not finished yet. Tell Earth that we answered the call." The Bizen Rising struck the processing facility like a meteor, destroying it completely. The explosion could be seen from orbit, a bright flash that lit up half the planet's night side, the site of humans, deliberately sacrificing their lives to protect alien prisoners they had never met shattered. Something fundamental in Vactal psychology. These weren't just warriors fighting for territory or resources. These were something else entirely. "They're not trying to conquer us," one Vactal captain was heard saying over the radio. "They're trying to save the prisoners. They came all this way just to save people they don't even know." Admiral Zekfel's voice came through the speakers one more time, but now it was filled with fear instead of rage. "What are you? What kind of species does this?" Admiral Neri's reply was simple and terrible. "We're humans. And you hurt people who asked for our help." The battle was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Vactal had never faced an enemy that fought not for conquest but for rescue. They had never encountered a species that would cross the galaxy to answer a stranger's cry for help. Now they were learning what happened when you made enemies of the most dangerous predators in the universe, angry humans with a righteous cause. The space around Kethver Prime was filled with burning Vactal ships. What had started as an organized alien fleet was now scattered pieces of metal drifting through the void. But the humans were not done yet. They had come here to save prisoners, and they would not stop until every captive was free. Captain Hyunjin commanded the destroyer Daegu's Thunder. His ship had taken heavy damage from Vactal energy weapons, but he and his crew refused to retreat. When their main guns stopped working, they did something that amazed even other humans. "Engineering, can you rig those mining charges we picked up at the asteroid station?" Hyunjin asked over the ship's communication system. Chief Engineer Yunwoo's voice came back excited. "Sir, I can attach them to our hull. Turn the whole ship into one giant bomb." "Do it, we're going to ram that Vactal battleship." The crew of the Daegu's Thunder worked together like they had practiced this insane plan their whole lives. They covered their ship's hull with explosive charges, aimed it at the largest enemy vessel they could find, and locked the navigation system. "This is Captain Hyunjin to all ships," he announced. "We're going to show these aliens how humans say goodbye." The destroyer crashed into the Vactal battleship at full speed. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from the other side. of the planet. When the light faded, both ships were gone. Admiral Zekthal watched this happen from his command ship and could not understand what he was seeing. Why do they do this? Why do they throw away their lives? His tactical officer, a creature with too many eyes and not enough courage, tried to explain. Admiral, intelligence reports say humans have something called emotions. They get angry. When innocents are hurt? Emotions are weakness, Zekthal replied. They make species easy to control. Sir, these humans don't seem controlled by anything. On the planet's surface, General Yemen's Marines were preparing for the ground assault. The old soldier stood in the landing bay of the transport ship Warrior's Rest, looking at 50,000 of the finest fighters humanity had ever produced. Listen up, he said, his voice carrying to every Marine through their helmet speakers. Down there are processing facilities full of prisoners. People who have been tortured and experimented on by these Vaktal monsters. Our job is simple, get them out alive. Colonel Sunhee stood beside him, checking her special operations equipment. Her teams would go in first, locating the prisoners, and securing escape routes. Intel says the facilities are heavily defended, she reported. Guard towers, energy barriers, automated weapons, Master Chief Haniel laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Ma'am, with respect, they built those defenses to keep prisoners in, not to keep Marines out. The landing craft launched toward the planet's surface like metal raindrops. Each one carried 100 Marines armed with weapons designed to work in any environment against any enemy. As they descended through the atmosphere, they could see the fires burning where Admiral Searkjin's ship had destroyed the main processing center. That's one facility down, General Yemen announced. Intel says there are 6 more scattered across the planet. We hit them all at the same time. The Marines landed in the middle of a Vaktal military base. The aliens had never seen anything like the assault that followed. Humans poured out of their landing craft like water from a broken dam, moving with purpose and deadly coordination. The Vaktal guards tried to fight back, but they were not ready for enemies who refused to be intimidated. Their energy weapons were powerful, but Marines were trained to fight under fire. Their armor was thick, but human weapons were designed to punch through anything. Colonel Sunhee's special operations teams moved through the facility like ghosts. They appeared in places the Vaktal thought were impossible to reach, striking from ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. The aliens had built their facilities to contain prisoners, not to defend against military assault. Processing Center 2 is secure, Sunhee reported. We've got about 300 prisoners here. They're in bad shape, but they're alive. Master Chief Haniel led the assault on the largest facility. His Marines went through the Vaktal defenses like a chainsaw. Through paper, guard towers fell to rocket launchers. Energy barriers collapsed under sustained fire. Automated weapons were destroyed by Marines, who had trained their whole lives for this kind of fighting, but it was inside the facilities that the real horror was revealed. The Marines found experimentation chambers filled with beings from dozens of different species. Some had been subjected to surgical procedures that no civilized species would perform on animals. Others showed signs of psychological torture designed to break their minds. Command, this is Haniel. The Master Chief's voice was tight with rage. You need to see what these monsters have been doing down here. The images that came back to the fleet were so disturbing that several officers had to leave their posts. The Vaktal had not just been conducting experiments. They had been systematically torturing innocent people for the pure sake of causing pain. Admiral Nari's response was broadcast to every human ship in the system. No prisoners. In space, the battle continued with new intensity. The remaining Vaktal ships tried to escape, but Captain Kangho's fast attack wing was waiting at every hyperspace jump point. The alien vessels found themselves trapped, unable to flee and unable to win. Commander Minna's mining ship Iron Mountain cornered a group of Vaktal cruisers near the planet's largest moon. Her industrial cutting laser sliced through their armor. Like it was made of butter? This is for everyone you tortured, she announced as her weapon destroyed another enemy ship. But the turning point in the battle came when Lieutenant Mayan made a crucial discovery. While analyzing captured Vactal communications, she found something that changed everything. "Admiral Nari," she called from her intelligence station. "I've figured out how their fleet works. It's all controlled from that big command ship. If, we can take out their flagship, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination." Admiral Nari looked at the tactical display showing the massive Vactal command ship. Terror of stars, it was surrounded by the strongest remaining enemy vessels, protected by energy shields and automated defenses. Getting close enough to destroy it would cost hundreds of human lives. "All ships," she announced, "concentrate fire on the enemy flagship. All weapons, maximum power." What followed was the most concentrated attack in human military history. Every ship in the fleet turned toward the terror of stars and opened fire at the same time. Railgun slugs, particle beams, missiles, and cutting lasers all converged on the massive enemy vessel. The Vactal command ship was enormous and heavily armored, but it had never been designed to withstand this kind of focused assault. Its shields collapsed under the combined firepower of 2,000 human ships. Its armor cracked and broke. Its hull began to come apart. Admiral Zekthal's final transmission was filled with disbelief and terror. "This is impossible. We are the Vactal Empire. We do not lose. We cannot lose." Captain Dongnan's reply came from the soul's fury as his railgun delivered the killing blow. "You lose because you hurt innocent people, and humans don't forgive that." The terror of stars exploded like a dying star, taking with it the central command system that controlled the entire Vactal fleet. The remaining alien ships found themselves without coordination, without leadership, and without hope. Some tried to surrender. Others attempted to flee. But the humans were in no mood for mercy. They had seen the torture chambers. They had witnessed the experiments. They had heard the screams of innocent prisoners. The Vactal Empire had made the fatal mistake of thinking that cruelty made them strong. They learned too late that there was something stronger than cruelty in the universe, the righteous anger of humans who had been asked for help. By the end of the day, not a single Vactal ship remained intact. The empire that had terrorized this part of the galaxy for generations was completely destroyed. Erased by beings they had dismissed as primitive mammals. On the planet's surface, the last processing facility fell to Master Chief Haniel's Marines. The final prisoners were rescued, carried to safety by humans who had traveled across the galaxy to answer their call for help. The SOS that Dr. Sumi had sent into the darkness had been answered in the most complete way possible. The silence after the battle was strange and heavy. Where once the space around Kethver Prime had been filled with the sounds of weapons fire and exploding ships, now there was only the quiet hum of human vessels moving through the debris field. The Vactal Empire was gone, completely destroyed, but the real work was just beginning. Dr. Minho opened his eyes in what he thought was another nightmare. He was lying on a clean bed in a room with white walls and soft lighting. For months, he had known only the dark metal cells of Vactal prison ships. This place looked too good to be real. "You're awake," said a gentle voice. A human woman in a medical uniform was checking a device beside his bed. "I'm Dr. Ji-Yoon. You're safe now. You're on a human medical ship." Minho tried to sit up, but his body was still weak from the experiments the Vactal had performed on him. "Sumi, my wife Sumi, is she ... She's alive," Dr. Ji-Yoon said quickly. "She's in the room next door, recovering. Commander Ji-Won is 3 doors down. All 3 of you are going to be fine." Tears ran down Minho's face. He had given up hope so many times during his captivity. The Vactal had told him that no one was coming, that no one cared about the prisoners they had taken. Now he learned that an entire human fleet had crossed the galaxy to rescue them. "How many ships did you bring?" he asked. 2,000, Dr. Ji-Yoon replied simply. "We brought everything we had." In the next room, Dr. Sumi was awake and talking to another human doctor. Her body bore the scars of Vactal experiments, but her mind was still strong. "My message," said. "Someone heard my message?" "Yes," said the doctor. "Admiral Nari received it personally?" She said anyone who calls for help while humans are listening will get an answer. Commander Jiwan was in worse shape. The Vactal had subjected her to psychological conditioning designed to break her will. But human medical technology was more advanced than the aliens had realized. Dr. Youngsu, the chief psychiatrist of the fleet, worked with her day and night to repair the damage. "You sent out that distress call 6 days ago," he told her during one of their sessions. 6 days later, the largest human fleet in history arrived to rescue you. That's how long it took us to organize everything and travel here. Juwan stared at him in amazement. 6 days? You mobilized an entire armada in 6 days? Actually, it took us 3 days to mobilize, Dr. Youngsu corrected. The other 3 days were travel time. The rescue operation was massive and complex. Human medical teams worked around the clock to save prisoners who had been tortured for months or even years. Beings from dozens of different species required different kinds of medical care, and the humans provided it all. Dr. Suni, the chief medical officer of the fleet, coordinated treatment for over 3,000 rescued prisoners. "We're seeing injuries I never learned about in medical school," she reported to Admiral Nari, "but we're saving them, every single one." The most challenging cases were those who had been subjected to psychological torture. The Vactal had developed techniques to break the minds of their victims, turning them into empty shells. But human doctors refused to accept that anyone was beyond help. "We don't give up on people," Dr. Youngsu explained to his staff. "That's what makes us different from the Vactal. They see beings as things to be used. We see them as people to be saved." Admiral Nari walked through the medical ships, visiting the recovered prisoners. Each one had a story of horror and suffering, but also of hope. They had all believed they would die in Vactal experiments. None of them had expected rescue. "Why did you come?" asked one prisoner, a lizard-like being from the far edge of the galaxy. "We are not your people. You owe us nothing." "You asked for help," Nari replied. "That's all we needed to know." The news of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than the human ships could travel. Species that had lived in fear of the Vactal Empire for generations learned that their tormentors were completely destroyed. Not a single Vactal ship had escaped to carry word of what happened, but it was not the military victory that captured galactic attention. It was the reason behind the victory. Ambassador Taejun of the Galactic Cooperative arrived at Kefver Prime 3 days after the battle. He came to investigate what had happened and to understand why humans had intervened in a conflict that was not their responsibility. "Admiral Nari," he said during their meeting on her flagship, "the Galactic Council is struggling to understand your actions. You mobilized your entire fleet to rescue people you had never met. The economic cost alone should have made this impossible." Nari showed him the medical ships where thousands of rescued prisoners were recovering. "Ambassador, we heard someone call for help. What else were we supposed to do?" "Most species would have filed the message and moved on," Taejun replied. "The logical response would be to avoid conflict with the Vactal Empire. Most species aren't human," Nari said simply. Dr. Minho was strong enough to give his testimony to the Galactic Council investigation team. He sat in a chair on the human medical ship, still weak but determined to tell his story. "The Vactal took us for experiments," he said. "They wanted to understand how different species work so they could create better weapons. They showed us their breeding farms on other worlds where they kept entire populations as slaves." The investigator, a tall being with blue skin and 6 arms, wrote down every word. "How many prisoners did you see?" "Thousands," Minho replied. "People from dozens of species? All being tortured and experimented on. The humans saved them all." "What was your impression of the human rescue operation?" Minho thought for a moment. "They came because we asked. That's what humans do. They answer when people call for help." The investigation team spent days interviewing rescued prisoners and examining the remains of Vactal ships. What they found was evidence of crimes so horrible that several species had no words for them in their languages. But they also found something else: Complete and total victory by a species that had fought not for conquest or resources, but simply because strangers had asked for help. The final report to the Galactic Council would become one of the most important documents in galactic history. It established what became known as the Terran Doctrine, humanity's official policy that any distress call received by human forces would be answered, regardless of the species in distress or the odds involved. Admiral Nari signed the doctrine in a ceremony aboard her flagship. Every flag officer in the human fleet countersigned it. The document was then transmitted to every species in the galaxy. Let it be known, the doctrine read, that humanity will answer any call for help from any being in distress. We do not ask about species, politics, or ability to pay. We ask only this: are you in trouble, and do you need help? If the answer is yes, we will come. The effect on galactic civilization was immediate and profound. Species that had been planning aggressive expansion quietly canceled their plans. The mere possibility that their victims might send a distress call that reached human ears was enough to deter most conflicts. The Zephyrian hegemony, which had been preparing to invade 3 neighboring systems, abandoned their military buildup. The Crystalline Syndicate stopped their slave raids in the Outer Rim. The Hive Collective ended their experiments on captured prisoners. All of them had learned the same lesson. Humans were listening, and humans would answer. Years later, Captain Dongman stood before new recruits at the Terran Naval Academy. Behind him hung a memorial plaque listing the names of the 847 humans who had died in the Battle of Kethver Prime. His words became the Academy's motto and the guiding principle of human military forces. Someone calls for help, we answer. That's not just military doctrine, that's what makes us human. Dr. Minho and Dr. Sumi returned to their research, now under the protection of the Terran Research Division. They continued to study ancient civilizations, but their work had new meaning. They had seen what happened when civilizations chose cruelty over compassion. They had also seen what happened when beings chose to help others despite the cost. Commander Jiwan joined the Terran Defense Force as a diplomatic officer. Her experience as a prisoner gave her unique insight into the psychology of both victims and aggressors. She became one of the most effective negotiators in human space, helping to prevent conflicts before they could begin. The human fleet returned to Earth as heroes, but they refused parades or celebrations. When reporters asked Admiral Nari about their victory, her response summed up the human perspective perfectly. We didn't do anything special. Someone needed help, so we helped. That's what neighbors do. Throughout the galaxy, on research stations and mining platforms, on colony worlds and trade routes, beings of dozens of species slept a little easier. They knew that somewhere among the stars humans were listening, and if they ever needed to call for help, the Deathworlders would answer. The SOS that Dr. Sumi had sent into the darkness had changed the galaxy forever. It had summoned not just an armada, but a promise that no one who asked for help would ever be alone as long as humans existed. And in the vast darkness of space, that promise burned like a beacon of hope for all who heard it.